My name is Amanda Carroll. I'm a REDCap admin here at The Ohio State University, over in the College of Medicine in the Biomedical Informatics Department. So today I'm talking to you about a little bit about REDCap. So what is REDCap? REDCap is an acronym for Research Electronic Data Capture. It originated from Vanderbilt University, from their Institute for Clinical and Translational Research. So it's a secure web-based data collection system. So data can be stored securely on OSU premise behind our firewall. Both the PHI and the non-PHI are now behind that firewall. Access rights are granted on per individual basis and can be configured to allow identified and de-identified data sets. It has a built-in audit trail of what is done and when. So this is valuable for IRB, DSMB, etc. So who uses REDCap? So there are currently over 3,700 institutions using REDCap, including all universities in the Big Ten. Woohoo! There's 130 plus countries using REDCap, about currently 800,000 projects on REDCap. There's about 1 million individual users and 7,200 plus articles citing REDCap in their citations. So why use REDCap? So as said before, it's web-based. So all data is collected in one location, accessible to investigators, CRCs, biostatisticians, pretty much anyone who wants access can eventually get access. It's available anywhere on campus or off campus using a VPN. If you're off campus, you will have to probably duo into it, but that's pretty easy. So for sites without internet access, it also has a REDCap mobile app. So this is for collection of forms and surveys, which can be deployed on tablets and sent out into the field. This is really helpful if you're, we have, for example, a study out in Africa who usually doesn't have Wi-Fi out when they go out into specific towns, and so they're able to go out with these tablets and still collect data. REDCap is also designed for research data capture. So this seamlessly integrates data collected by study staff and those reported by the patient. It keeps it on one spot so you don't have to keep looking between different locations. Facilitates longitudinal data collection via follow-up visits or emailed surveys. So this is really great. Unlike Qualtrics, which we'll get to later, REDCap has a longitudinal aspect of it where you can keep one form and use it multiple times over a time period, so you don't have to have a repeating form in your study. It also includes features such as validation, branching logic, and commenting at the field level. This is really helpful for tracking, and it's really helpful for getting good data out of your data collection. And it supports randomization of participants using a predefined allocation table. So REDCap has both a test table and a real table that you would use in production. So you can test to make sure your randomization is working properly and that you can randomize your patients using multiple strata as well. So data is secure. So as said before, PHI and non-PHI, or PII, are behind the enterprise firewall. So this has access rights granted on a per individual basis, configured to allow identified or de-identified data access. It has a comprehensive logging and audit trail, so it records those who have accessed the data, changed the data, or exported the data. It also tracks before and after values when inputted, changed, or deleted. This is really important. If you go in and you accidentally change something, you can go back and easily look at what the value was before and change it back to that. It also has past data dictionaries stored to track the data on the collection forms. So you can go back and look at what your previous data dictionary was. In case someone submitted a change that wasn't supposed to be submitted, you can easily go back and change it to what it was before. So REDCap security and integrity. Data is stored on the OSUMC servers behind the firewall, as stated before. So access rights are granted so that you can all choose who can have access to this. PHI is a little harder to get into. You do have to have OSUMC credentials or a background check to get those credentials to get into the PHI server. Non-PHI is easier. You either need a name.number to get in, or we can assign you a name.number that you can easily get access to. So there's also a comprehensive audit trail for REDCap, as talked about before, and past data dictionaries are stored to track the changes. So types of REDCap projects. So there's surveys, data entry forms, and then you have surveys plus data entry forms. So surveys, so these can be anonymous or identifiable. They can be deployed on a schedule or based on logic, and they can be sent out via email, a public link, or via text now, which is using Twilio. And then there's data entry forms. So there's a classic, which is more than one form used at one time or over a repeatable instance. And then there's longitudinal, so multiple forms, multiple events over a time period. And then you can also combine these together. You don't have to choose one or the other. You can use both surveys and data entry forms in your project. So some features of REDCap. So there, as said before, there's data entry forms and surveys. There's the logging and audit trail. There's also a file repository. So say you started your study, you have all of these consent forms signed that you want to now store in REDCap so you can shred them. That is very easy to do. You can scan them in, you can tag them to the person who they belong to, and they're saved right there behind the firewall for you. There's also record locking. So if you go in, you download your data, and you want to make sure that that data is now not changed because you're doing analysis on it, you can lock those records to make sure that no one changes that data and it stays as is. There's also the randomization, as talked about before. Then there's the data quality module. So this includes real-time checks. So this is to make sure you're getting good data out of your data collection. You can run real-time rules to look through all of your data and pull back any issues that you're currently having. And then there's also data export to common statistical packages, and you can de-identify that data. Within REDCap, there's an option to mark certain fields as identifiers, such as name, MRN, so on and so forth. And then when you export, you can choose to remove all tagged identifiers. And so this will automatically take out all of your identifiers, de-identify your data, and you can use that however you'd like. And you can also report or export to statistical packages, such as SPSS, SAS, so on and so forth. And then you also have the ability to have multiple study arms. So say you have multiple arms or multiple locations within your study, and you want to keep those patients separate but still within the same project. That is possible within REDCap. There's different things we call arms, and so you can name your arms however you'd like, and then you can also give individual events for those arms so that those patients are separate and have their own study going. So here's a little snapshot of the REDCap design interface. So there's 3 methods you can use to create data collection instruments. The online designer, which is what this is. The data dictionary, which is Excel-based. It's a little more confusing. I'd recommend building one in the online designer, downloading it, looking at the data dictionary to figure out how to use that. Or you can download from the REDCap shared library, which is very helpful. And we actually currently have the OSU consent form currently built and uploaded into that shared library, so you don't even have to build a consent form now. You can download it and fill in all your information, which is very helpful. So as said before, REDCap has field types and validations, and so this is what that would look like. So if we put in a text box and we want to validate for any of these things, usually we would validate for especially a date or an email address or numbers. This is very helpful because if you ask for someone's age, someone will type out like 34 in letters, which is not helpful for your data analysis at all. So we recommend validating for a number or a date because people put in dates in many different ways, and so this gives you a specific way that you're collecting your date. Same for email, because as we all know, people have fat fingers and don't know how to type sometimes, and you get funny email addresses. So this makes sure that you get a real email address. So REDCap, this is a REDCap record dashboard. So you've started collecting data, you want to look at your patients or participants that you've started collecting data on and who's completed what. So this is what the dashboard looks like. As you can see, we have a legend up here to the right, which tells you kind of what those bubbles mean. So you can use those bubbles for anything you want in your study. Your study team can determine what those mean. We usually use like yellow to mean incomplete, still working on, missing data. Green is completed. And as you can see, there's a difference between a green check and a green bubble. The green check means it was completed via survey. The green bubble means it was completed via data collection instrument. So that's a good way to see like who's done what. And then the little plus next to the multiple bubbles, that is green, that's a repeating instrument. So if you don't want to have a full event repeating, but you want to have one instrument, such as a medication form repeated in an instrument, this is what that would look like. You would just click the plus to add another instrument, and it is very seamless. So this is the data entry interface. So a patient comes in and you don't want to hand them your tablet. You want to instead read the survey to them and collect data that way. This is what that would look like to you. So you would go and open a record, click on a bubble, and then this would pop up as your instrument that you're collecting data on. So as you can see, you can type your data in. It's asking for a first name, last name. You can easily check boxes, check bubbles, and then that will come back as that green bubble to say that you've completed this data collection. So REDCap Data Dictionary. So as we said before, this was one way to create a REDCap project. So this is in CSV format in Excel. Documents are you can have document field names, types, and branching logic all built in within this Excel document. It's very useful for analysts and statisticians to build REDCap projects this way because they're very used to working in Excel, and it is very easy to see all of your logic right there in front of you instead of having to scroll through pages. You can also create instruments and fields by editing the data dictionary in Excel and uploading it. I often do this if someone gives me a project that I don't think is built correctly. I will download it, build it how I would like to build it, and re-upload it so that it is correct and working and functioning well. This also saves time by using copy and paste to edit large blocks of questions. So within the online designer, although it's very helpful, it has a nice drag and drop option. You can type and it tells you where to put everything. The Excel is very useful for copying and pasting the large blocks. So if you have an entire instrument that should be moved, or half of an instrument that should be moved to another instrument, instead of individually dragging all of those questions over, you can just copy and paste them in Excel and move them all over, and it's very easy. And you can also share forms between projects. So say you have a friend out in California who uses REDCap, who you want to use one of their forms in one of their projects because you're doing a similar study or using a similar instrument. You can say, hey, will you download this CSV file from your REDCap project and send it over to me? And you can easily upload it, and then now you have their instrument, and you can edit it as you'd like. So is there anything I can't do in REDCap? So it doesn't prevent entry of data that is out of range. So it will give you a warning when you're out of range with data. So you can set ranges, for example, for ages. We know someone is not going to be less than 0 or over, say, 120. So you can set limits for that. However, if someone types in 122, they would be wrong, but they could, and it would tell them they were out of range, but it won't prevent them from continuing on with their data collection. So as said, it will provide a warning message, but it can be overridden. It doesn't support billing within the software. So you will have to use other systems if you want billing to be added to your project. That is one downfall, but usually through Epic or something like that, through the IHIS, you can usually use billing that way. And 21 CFR Part 11 is ready, but not compliant on its own yet. You will have to go through additional process and procedures to put in place for your study outside of REDCap to be fully compliant, but we can work with you on that. So a brief word about Qualtrics. So this is the other only data collection instrument certified by OSU to use at the medical center, or technically across Ohio State at all. So it's great for one-time surveys, but is not recommended for longitudinal projects. So contrasted with REDCap, it only has a survey function, not data entry function. So you can only send out Qualtrics surveys. You cannot just go into REDCap and do your data collection there, or go into Qualtrics and do your data collection there. Ohio State has an institution-wide license, so it's free and easy to use. Anyone can upgrade their license for free to get more features in Qualtrics, which is very nice that Ohio State does that for us. It exports to MS Excel, SPSS, and XML, just the same as REDCap. Its integrated statistics module, Stats IQ, is very helpful. You can run statistics right in Qualtrics without having to export it. And it's available to faculty, staff, and students at no cost with unlimited questions and responses. Thank you, OSU, for that. So, but what about Excel? Excel is widely available, easy, and familiar. However, it is not an optimal data collection tool. Data is easily corruptible by sorting or filtering or hiding or anything like that. That happens to me all the time. I hide something, forget I hid it, and I think it's gone forever. Limit of 256 columns. So as we all know, a project can definitely be more than 256 columns. So Excel does limit that, which is annoying, so you'd have to have multiple pages, and it just gets confusing. And it has a validation possible, but it's very cumbersome to do. And you have a potential for mixing PHI with non-PHI. So you can email this document anywhere, you can save it anywhere, and you don't know what's being put on this Excel sheet, and you could be mixing PHI or sending out PHI when you're not supposed to be. And you can't have multiple users and multiple versions with no audit log. So if you're sending this Excel to 3 people, they all make edits and send it back to you. Which one is the correct one? Which one should you use? Who knows? There's no audit log to determine which one, who's changed what, or where anything went, and it just gets confusing. So we recommend not using Excel for data collection. If you are, come talk to us. We'll help you put it into REDCap. So here's a nice comparison table for you about access. So as you can see, REDCap, you can store S4 data, same as study tracks, which you'll hear about soon, but you cannot store S4 data in Qualtrics. You will have to work with us and OSUMC IT and the privacy and security officers to determine if you can store your S4 data in Qualtrics. I think we have one project that does. They usually don't approve this because it's based off in the cloud. It's not stored behind an OSUMC firewall, so that data can be corrupted. REDCap, the storage is on, as said, the REDCap is on the OSU server, as Qualtrics is in the cloud, and StudyTracks has their own server. REDCap for it's customizable. It's moderate. You can do some things in REDCap. If you know HTML, you can change letter fonts, colors. You can add color boxes. You can underline. But you do have to learn some HTML for that. Hopefully, with the new upgrade coming in December, we will have a nice little tool. So it looks like Word in REDCap, where you can do all of that without learning HTML. Woohoo! Very excited for that. But it is coming soon. In Qualtrics, it is very limited for what you can customize. There's not much you can really do in Qualtrics, and StudyTracks is very extensive. For access, REDCap, you only need an email address for non-PHI. Like I said, you can use your name.number, or we can assign one to you. And then for PHI, you do need a MedCenter ID with a background check. But we can help you get that as well. You just fill out a form, and we will submit a background check for you, and we can get that process rolling. For Qualtrics, anyone with a name.number can get into Qualtrics, which is very nice. And for StudyTracks, you would contact the StudyTracks to get access to it. For ease of use, REDCap is moderate. That's pretty accurate. It can be a little hard to learn at first if you're not a computer person, but we do have trainings, which I'll talk about in the future, that you can come and you can learn how to use REDCap, or you can have us build it for you. We do have a fee for service that we can meet with you, either help you build it, or you can tell us you'd like us to build it, and it's pretty easy to use. Qualtrics is very easy to use. Most of you probably used Qualtrics or seen Qualtrics before. Very easy to set up, and StudyTracks is moderate as well. So for support and training. So REDCap has online support that you can access in REDCap or Google. It's all over Google. We also have regularly scheduled in-person trainings through BMI or CCTS that you can come and attend, where we will train you on Design 1, Design 2, how to use REDCap, how to enter data, all that stuff. Qualtrics is all online support. We don't really have a big support team here at OSU for Qualtrics, so it's kind of a on-your-own thing, but in Qualtrics, they do have a support system as well. And then StudyTracks is provided by StudyTracks. They do have support that is offered for you. And then export formats. I won't read all these to you. As you can see, both REDCap and Qualtrics have a lot of export formats. And then for StudyTracks, you can export to CSV or PDF. CSV is quite useful because you can then upload that into most statistical packages. However, REDCap and Qualtrics, REDCap and SPSS for Qualtrics, you can export directly into a stats package. So now for features. So REDCap, for branching logic, as you can see, all three have branching logic. So if you don't know what branching logic would mean, that's if I ask you a question and the next one would be if yes, then ask this question, that's branching logic. So you don't have to show the if yes. It would just, you would add the branching logic to say, if they answer yes to this one, show this question, and then there you go. You don't even have to show it if they answer no. Question randomization. So in REDCap, you can randomize question responses, but not question order yet. In Qualtrics and StudyTracks, you can randomize questions quite easily. Participant randomization, all three are capable of that. E-consent with signature. REDCap does have this framework built into it that you can enable in your project. This means that it will download as a PDF, save to your record archiver, and you could even send that out to the participant if you need to. It is certified by OSU as an official e-consent signature, and so it is, you can collect your signatures that way for your e-consent and HIPAA framework for your project. Qualtrics does not have this framework. Along with S4 data, it is not capable of doing an e-consent, so if you do need a signature for your project, do not use Qualtrics. And StudyTracks has that option as well to be able to be certified for e-consent framework. Pipe text, REDCap, or all three are capable of having pipe text, which is if you have an answer on a previous page that you want them to be able to see again, or pipe a name into an email, all three are capable of doing that. Audit trail. So REDCap and StudyTracks both have an audit trail to track all of the work that you've done, or all the answers that you've changed, or anything that's happened within the system, whereas Qualtrics does not have this. Calculated fields, all three have those. Integrated calendar. So REDCap, you can create a calendar for your project. You can have patients on this calendar. You can schedule events and meetings and visits on this calendar. Same with study tracks as well. This is also a calendar for your forms, so it tells you when you're able to access a form to collect data. This prevents you from collecting data at inappropriate times. And Qualtrics does not have this. And same with longitudinal data. REDCap and study tracks both have a longitudinal function, whereas Qualtrics does not have this. So if you're using a longitudinal project, collecting any data over a period of time, do not use Qualtrics. So REDCap training, as I mentioned before, so there are embedded videos within REDCap. So within REDCap, you will see this on the bottom left-hand corner. It has a help and FAQ page where you can find some easy, simple things about REDCap of what you might be trying to do. And there's video tutorials as well. So all of these tutorials are available for you to look at, so you can find a brief overview, types of projects, how to create and manage surveys, so on and so forth. And then we also have training in person and via WebEx here at OSU. So you can find the full schedule at that link up there. We do have part 1, which we just had earlier this week. So the next one will be early in 2020, TBA. Check the webpage, we'll put it up soon. And this is where individuals can learn how, very newbie to REDCap, how to learn about how to create a project within REDCap, the basics of building a project, the basics of how REDCap works in general. All that will be taught in Design 1. Design 2 next one is November 25th, so coming up soon. Registration opens about 2 weeks before, so look out for that if you'd like to come. You can do these in any order as well, by the way. So if you want to start with session 2, you're welcome to do that. So individuals who have some REDCap experience can come to this. We go a little more into depth about how to build REDCap forms. So if you have any general knowledge about REDCap, you can come to that one easily. REDCap data entry. So if you are not on the building side of REDCap, however, you are going to be collecting data for your team, and you'd like to learn how to do that within REDCap, we have a session for that on December 3rd. So that would be great for you. And then program managers and coordinators, if you're in charge of your REDCap program or your REDCap project and you'd like to come learn how to be in charge of that, come on December 13th and we'll teach you how to do that as well. So some next steps. Most research studies that should use REDCap. There's use case for Qualtrics, should be discussed with BMI. However, in general, most medical research studies should be done in REDCap. Request for your REDCap account is at this link, and then you can request a project as well here. If you don't currently have a REDCap account, I'd recommend going ahead and requesting one, and then we can set up a meeting to go over what project you'd like to build and what your options are for that. As listed here, we do have a DIY service or fee-for-service build at BMI. It's $85 an hour for us. However, there are voucher funds available through CCTS that you can apply for, that you can get that covered. And we highly recommend working with a biostatistician as part of your data management plan. So thank you again. My name is Amanda Carroll. I'm a resource planning analyst here at The Ohio State University. And this is our joint email address with my colleague, Heather Lansky, who was not able to be here today. But feel free to reach out to that email address, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Okay. I'm John Putzkey, so I appreciate everyone taking time out today to go over this. It's an honor to be here really at Ohio State, and I appreciate the opportunity and all the work that Amy and others have done to make this happen. It's been a long time in the works to make study tracks available here. I'm going to utter a phrase that I didn't think I'd ever say. Having grown up in Minnesota, I didn't think I'd ever utter the phrase that Minnesota actually has a chance. Wouldn't think when you grow up there, it's Ohio State will crush you. Ohio State will crush you. That's literally how they start in kindergarten. That's what you say there, right? But maybe this year, I don't know. All right, probably not. As I go through this, if you have questions, certainly just let me know. Happy to address. It helps me to know who the audience is too. So just by there's a lot of different things I could cover. But knowing your expertise would really be helpful. Who would put themselves in the boat of a PI? Working on studies, putting together grants, those kinds of things. Okay, just a couple folks. Biostatistician, the folks who has to, they're in the trenches trying to get stats done. Any of those folks here? Okay, not a lot of those. More data entry. Data entry folks, study coordinator types of people? Admin folks? Research admin? Okay, and how many people only came here because they thought there was going to be a breakfast and there's not, and they're really upset? Is there a list like that? Okay, good. I'm glad there's not. Okay, well, when it comes to electronic data capture, you really have to get your frame right? Like, well, how are you going to frame what that means? And if you think of all the attentional literature that's out there, what you attend to is what you see, right? And once you see something, that's all the perceptual literature, right? Where your attention is focused, that's what you're going to perceive. And then once you see something, that is all you can see, right? And that's all the stuff about functional fixedness and those kinds of things. So you got to get your aim right. Okay, so what is it that we mean when we say electronic data capture? And for us, there's several different components. One is the data piece. Okay, and that's a lot of what you just heard. And that's really taking the research enterprise and scaling that up, right? Creating a system where you can put together forms and data and help the coordinators march people through a protocol and wrap that all up in a secure central database. A lot of this work uses the entity value attribute. Some work, Nancarney and Brandt were the first to talk about that for the folks who are interested in how to make this happen at the data model. And the main reason why this was done was a security issue. In fact, Bob, I think Paul Harris's grant, that was a big part of it when he started REDCap, was let's get a security wrapper around this entire thing. Paul Harris is at Vanderbilt, he's one of the founders, and I think he's still there, working on REDCap. So that's one piece. The other is the subject piece, okay? And this is, I think the key here is how do we engage subjects in the research process, okay? So how do we, and this is not just can we log in and fill out forms, but how do we engage them throughout the entire process as they go through the research protocol? So making it an interactive portal where they're not only filling out forms, you're delivering information that's specific to them, right? I just got enrolled in a cancer trial. Let me see the support groups that are in the area. Let me see my particular diagnosis, my particular treatment that I'm going to go through. I have an MRI scheduled next week. Let me see what that experience is. So trying to tailor the information to that specific person, right? Basically give them a reason why to participate in the study, in addition to capturing their data. That's a big piece. And the reason why it's a big piece is the dropouts and missing data and incomplete data. So if you're sitting at the end of a trial with a statistician and you're trying to choose the pros and cons between different multiple imputation methods of how to deal with your missing data, at that point, the ship has already sailed, right? It's a little too late. So you're really trying to minimize the amount of missing data and give people an incentive to participate in your research. And if you don't do that, just a thought experiment, right? How long, for people that are motivated to do research, medical research, how long would you participate in a study where the only thing that happened when you logged in was you have a big long list of forms? Right? Just answer that for yourself. Okay. That's a real important piece. The other is the reporting piece, okay? And it's at two different levels. So when you put data into a system, you've got to be able to leverage it immediately. You're not waiting, you're not exporting it out over here, and now we can do this. And certainly you can do those things. You can take a raw export out to SAS or SPSS or whatever stat package you happen to be using. And you can do whatever you want there, but you have to be able to leverage the data in there. And it provides a lot of contingencies to use the data while you're gathering it, right? So at one level is the subject level. So how do I take all the data for a given subject, throw it into the report, like if someone's in a registry, so that during case conference, for instance, we're going to look at that data and present it visually in this case. That's one. That's the subject level. The other is at the group level. Okay, so this is more, our target market is academic research. You're about to see why. But we're all here trying to, at the end of the day, run the studies, but we're trying to publish, right? Either manuscripts, posters, abstracts, going to different conferences and whatnot. And one of the big issues is there is a long and often painful process from raw data to the end result manuscript. Right? This is usually what kills a lot of students that may have an interest in research, right? And then they do their first paper, right? And they collect all this data, and now it's sitting here in this great big table, and now what? You know? And there's a lot of different pieces that have to come together, and a lot of different applications that have to come together to get to that end result manuscript. That needs to be in there, and then you have to think about that a priori. And it should be a part of the EDC if you're targeting academic research. And then there needs to be a communication piece that connects everyone together. So like Slack or Microsoft Teams for the folks that are familiar with those two tools. So all the users of the system and all the people that are participating in research are connected together via a communication mechanism. Okay. How many people are familiar with REDCap? Oh, okay, so everyone, all right. Or nearly everyone. And how many, just to make me feel good, let's just put all our hands up. How many people are familiar with study tracks and have seen it before? Oh, okay, there actually is a few people. Okay, good. All right, so this will be the first time seeing it. So I'll go through this and just show you what the application looks like here. So now again, consider those pieces, right? What would that even look like? I'm going to run my studies. I'm going to engage patients. I'm going to build my manuscripts, and I'm going to have a communication piece. Okay. So this is the application. And this is me as a user logging into study tracks. This is what I would see. This is the subject sees something very different. So if I was participating in the study, I would not see this. I'll show you that in a second. This is the home page. Every page is laid out the same way. The main menu at the top, name of the page. There's a toolbar. These are the studies that I have access to. So I might be one investigator, and I'm involved in, in this case, 12 different studies or so. Those would all be listed there. Then there's a selector panel on the right-hand side, and that drives the content. So the page structure is very similar from one study to the next. And I'm just going to go to the main data entry screen. Okay, so here's the main data entry screen. If I am the study coordinator or data entry person, and I'm putting in data for this particular study. So up on the left, there's the person, name of the study. There's the protocol. There's a visual timeline that I can, if there's a lot going on there, I can zoom in, zoom out. But there's a baseline, year 1, 2, and 3. The year 3 is orange, so that you know that's the one that's due. It's color-coded, so you know which ones are complete, which ones are not. So if I was going to enter data, I just click on one of these guys, like the baseline, and it's going to bring up all the forms. Okay. It's a little different than REDCap in the sense that you can lay this out however you want it to lay out. This is back of your retina. So this is one person enrolled in this study. They may be enrolled in multiple studies. Okay. So just to show you what that looks like, I'm going to go to, here they are in a clinical trial. This is a clinical trial. I'll mention here that we've integrated in medications, meaning that when you look at the visual display here, you can see what concomitant medications in this case that they're on. And all that's been tied back into data sets directly, which I'll be showing you quickly. So just know from the perspective of the data entry person, what they're doing is putting in data. And then on the analytical side, all that's integrated into our data sets. So like at the month 1 visit, they might be on 10 different medications. And they might be on, let's just say, 5 different dopaminergic agonists. And I want to know that as a part of my analysis. Study tracks will go in, look at all the dopaminergic agonists at visit 1, and put that into one cell for that person for me. It'll do things like that. So that's the reason for the medication piece. And now I'm going to show you what I meant by that reporting. So here, this person's also in a registry. This is a melanoma registry. Okay, so imagine, in this particular registry, they have all kinds of things happening, right? All kinds of forms that are collected, that are gathered as part of the person coming in. And you can imagine trying to sit down and figure out what the heck is going on with this person, with all this data that we've captured. And this is why that reporting piece is so important, right? So imagine pretty much anything you can dream up, taking all this data and presenting it visually however you want to present it visually. And just to give you an example, the reports are over here on this side. So when I run this guy, it's going back, grabbing all that person's data, pulling it together, and then it's going to create this report that you can go out to a PDF or whatever it is that you happen to want to go out to. But it's doing a number of things. The top part is more like a boilerplate, like a Microsoft Word boilerplate, right? You can do the obvious things. The person's sex, male, female, right? I can put in that text and then have it spit out, oh, it's a male or it's a female. Right? I can do that type of thing. That's what's going on at the top. Just grab a value from a field and stick it here and have some text that you type in. Or you can do conditional text, like the patient presented with, and then have a condition. If their systolic blood pressure is above 130, it would say HTN. Otherwise, it would say normotensive. So you can do that kind of stuff as well, conditional logic. What's happening here is that we put together a standardized image of all the systems where tumors could be in this case. It's going back and looking where the tumors have been entered for this actual case. Name obviously is different. But it's going back, looking at all the tumors this person has, and then it puts them up and maps them onto that image. And if there's more than one tumor, it'll put a number in there, 2, 3, 4, however many there are for that particular system or organ. And then going down, just to give you an idea of some of the things you can do, certainly you can do charts and graphs, and you can do conditional logic, like this. That table right there it'll only turn red if there's a tumor in that particular system. Right? It's counting up how many are there. Graph, whatever it is that you may want. This is just more of the different types of visits and issues that they collect. It's going and summarizing all that data that was important to them. They wanted a timeline in here from tumor onset all the way through. They wanted to know when were they on different therapies, the length of time. So visually you can line things up, what all happened to this person. There's additional details down here. If you want to learn more about the types of things that you could do, if you go to our website and just go all the way down to the bottom where it says articles, and then go to right there, design techniques, okay? And there'll be a bunch of stuff that you can take a look at, right? But just know that pretty much anything you can dream up, and this is all done through JavaScript. So there's kind of 2 ways that you can do it. One is just a drag and drop for creating tables and typing. It's a word processor, right? And if I want a table of data and I want certain things to be yellow and red if a value is above, all that's done through just a drag and drop interface. But then you can do whatever you want through JavaScript to build your own HTML in there. So it has its own, you can use a programming language to do and grab any of your data elements and do whatever you want with in the report. Okay. So that's reports at the subject level. All these reports here grab the data from that person here. Okay? Now we're going to look at the data set level. Okay, so you can imagine, I won't spend a whole lot of time here, but it's just to give you a sense as to what can be done. This is what we call the Workbench area. And this would be the investigator's Biosketch. Right? These are all the manuscripts, posters, presentations that they're working on. Has anyone ever heard of Reference Manager? So it's kind of like Reference Manager, where as you're typing, you can say, put this reference here, except for this is tied back to your data. Okay? So let me show you how it works. And if you wear a little bit more of an admin hat, think of this as like a QA report across our department. We want to know of the 13 different studies, where are we in terms of enrollment? You can do that kind of thing too. Right? But more traditionally, this would be used for manuscripts and posters and that kind of thing. So one piece is putting together data sets. Right? So I need to have one area where I'm pulling together the data sets that I'm going to use in this particular manuscript that I'm putting together. I'll just point out a couple things that you may not anticipate. One is the scale of what you're looking at. In this one area, notice here, these data sets are coming from different studies. So I'm grabbing one data set from one study, I'm grabbing another data set from a different study. I can have as many studies as I want, and I'm pulling that all together into one area. The other is what we've done on the stats end. Now, I'm not going to show that because we didn't have anyone here who does the analytical stuff, but just know this is not merely just, here's the export, right? This is not, I need to come here so that I can dump data out to a stat package. Certainly you can do that, but we've built a ton of different things into our data sets because what we're really trying to do is take these data sets, think about what we're going to present in our tables, and then have that be in our manuscript and have that be generated in the application. Okay, so if I come down here, so with these data sets, I can build charts and tables, and this all comes together in something we call reports. And this is also how you build forms where you have an editor. Okay, so I'm just typing. But what this is saying right here is put this table in this location of this document. So that when I go back and run this, I think it was this one. And I don't like to show this to graduate students because the hair starts to get pulled out, right? But what this is doing is going back, grabbing all the data out of the data sets, and creating your manuscript tables. Notice that? Now, we're not there yet, but at the end of the day, that's what we're trying to do. If I was standing over the investigator in this workbench area, watching that person put together their poster or their manuscript, that's the functionality that we're trying to build here in this workbench area. Right? That's addressing that issue of, yes, we're here to collect data, but yes, we're trying to get this out into the community and into journals and into conferences and those kinds of things. So that's that reporting piece. Okay? And then I'll end on this is what it looks like if I was a subject. Okay, so I'm logging in. You could be same thing. I could be in multiple different studies. I would pick the study that I'm in. I would go to that. So over here, it's telling me that I need to go. This is data entry, so I could click here. I can go see all the forms that I need to fill out. I won't go through that. But I'll go through a couple things. Here's the timeline. So they have their own timeline in here, so they can see when certain events are going to happen. Right? They have reports. And those reports that I showed you, they don't have to have anything to do with data necessarily. Right? It could just be information. So again, now I come in here and I'm going to click on this. And this is just information for me that's specific to whatever I happen to fill out or whatever the staff happen to fill out that they want me to see. And maybe it doesn't get delivered to me until somewhere down the line, or maybe there's a, hey, welcome to this study, here's what to expect, all that kinds of stuff. And I have a ton of different examples I could show you, but just get the sense that these reports are the same reports where I showed you the melanoma, so it's just by checking a box, they'll show up for the subject. If you don't check the box, it won't show up here. But if you do, then it will show up here, so they have the access to the same reports. There's rewards. So if you feel, if you come in and you get to the point where you're randomized, maybe you get 100 points for that. Or if you get to the point where, okay, now it's the year one follow-up, and you fill out some form, you get a certain number of points for that, which then can be exchanged. And then there's also a communication piece. Right? So at any point, if the study coordinator has a question for me, and this is all secure, it's not, there'll be a little email that will go out that says, hey, you have a new message, kind of like a bank system. In that email, it'll say, click here to see the message. They would click, they'd come in, and that little message thing would have the number of messages, new messages that have not been read. And then you'd be able to correspond here securely. So this is that Teams, Slack type of component. Okay. All right, now I know I've thrown a lot at the group and covered a lot of territory. So with the little bit of time that I have left, any questions about the application or thoughts about what is it when we say electronic data capture? What are we trying to aim at? Okay. Yeah. Amy.
So you said the patient could be on multiple studies. Can their data be merged across both those studies, like demographic data, just their basic information, history, medications, and those be linked on both studies so we don't have to re-enter the data multiple times?
The answer is both yes and no, so it just depends. Not everyone sees it. So it's a role-based system. If you come in here and you're the biostatistician, you're probably not going to see medications, for instance. Right? You wouldn't even see that main menu item. The person who's doing the administering study tracks would see this. This is the system setup area. This is where you would enter things that can be used across studies. Like I'm one user, but I have access to multiple studies. But my user account is set up in system setup. So one type of form is what we call subject variables. And those are the things that you might anticipate. They're demographics, they're medical history, like blood type, things that don't change, right? Those forms are shared across studies. Same thing with, so when I come here, in terms of how this is architectured, when I go to this subject overview page, and I go to a study that they're collecting, I think this registry. Yeah, so notice this medication data is just a feature, right? You either turn it on or you turn it off. And as I go from one study to the next, if a study wants and will be contributing to the medication data, it'll show up for them. If they're not interested, because not every study cares about whether or not what medications they're on, it's not going to show up, right? So that's the same thing with those subject variables. Once they're set up, each study decides, do they want to participate or not? Same thing with medication. But they tend to be sort of your one-time type of variables. Birth date, gender, race, those kinds of things. Okay. Yeah?
So people never use study track and want to try out, see how it is. Is there any option of going on a website and check out and play around it? Doing like a study on
Yeah, sometimes we'll set up sandbox. Just all depends on the group. Sometimes they like to just go in there and build a few forms, dump the data out, that kind of thing. Yeah, yeah. Or they pick a study, right? And they just go, we want to try it and just see how it works. And they, yeah. You can import data. If you already have an existing, certainly you can dump out stuff from REDCap, for instance, into an Excel file and then bring it. And that happens a lot. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. I will stop there. Thank you so much, everyone.